Hello, and welcome to Make It Happen. This is a new channel dedicated to DIY. I intend to upload videos of all of my projects here. Anything from woodworking, metalworking, plastic, oftentimes featuring electronics. Some projects are more practical than others, but hopefully always inspiring to pick up the tools and build something yourselves. Since this is my first video, I thought I should make something special for the channel. An LED backlit sign with the name of the channel should do nicely. So, let's begin and make it happen.
I'm starting with a base, for which I collected some scrap wood from a stock and cut it to size. I'm making a rectangular hole in one of the pieces to hold the switch to turn the LEDs on and off. I used my drill for the task, and now I'm using a Dremel to give the hole a rectangular shape. With the switch sliding in perfectly, I can now proceed to the next step. Since I wanted to use up the leftovers from my previous projects, the boards I chose were not wide enough. I had to glue a couple of them together. I'm using a thin layer of wood glue to join the pieces together. I'm using an F-clamp to secure them in place before allowing enough time for the glue to cure. Once I have all the pieces, I'm ready to glue them all together. As you can see, this makes a little box. It's meant to house the batteries for the LEDs and the brightness control circuitry. I am now gluing two small pieces of wood in place to prevent the lid from sinking too deep. With the glue set, I'm drilling a tiny hole. I will be able to route the wires out and connect them to LEDs. Some sanding allows me to achieve a smooth finish, as well as to remove the excess glue which might have left over. Since this project is dedicated for my channel, I'm engraving the actual date I registered it on YouTube. Finally, I'm brushing on some teak oil to give the box a little shine. Next, I'm moving on to the display panel. I'm starting off by cutting a 3mm acrylic sheet to the desired dimensions. It seems that you're looking at a slow-mo footage, but I can assure you you're not. The school effect is completely accidental. This has to do with the oscillation frequency of my jigsaw quite closely matching the frames per second my camera shoots in. In other words, every time a camera makes a snapshot, the blade of the jigsaw comes back to the same position, just a cycle or even two later. As a result, it appears that the blade never moved at all. Quite cool. I've cut out and sanded a wooden backboard for the acrylic to be glued on. I'm putting on some teak oil to achieve the same glossy looks as with the base. I now have to transfer the desired text onto a piece of paper, but since I don't have access to the printer at the moment, I have to improvise. The font I'm using, by the way, is called Cool Jazz. It was an easy pick. It's one of my favorite fonts. Not bad at all. Since I intend to put the LEDs behind the letters, and I want the light to be diffused, I engraved a thin frame around the text. And now for the most difficult part of the project. Cutting out the letters out of aluminium. I tried a hammer and a chisel, but that would bend the metal. Tried cutting discs on my Dremel, but that proved to be too messy. To my surprise, I got the best results with my bulky jigsaw, though the cuts weren't too clean. So if you could have your letters laser or water jet cut, that would produce a much prettier finish. Once finally I finished cutting the letters, I used the file against rough edges. I used a strip of sandpaper to reach less accessible parts. Finally, thanks to my Dremel, I managed to take care of all the curves and all the corners. Now for the electronics. I added some brightness control because I wanted to find the right balance between white and red light. On the one hand, I could use PWM, which is a preferred method in most cases due to its efficiency. It's implemented here using the circuit diagram shown. By turning the potentiometer one way or another, I'm changing the size of the pulse, and thus the average power delivered to the LEDs. The efficiency comes from the fact that when the current flows, all of it goes through the LEDs. In contrast here, the brightness of the LED is varied by taking the power away from it and wasting it in the potentiometer. Nevertheless, I opted for the second option, because it requires fewer components and my intentions are to only tune the brightness once. Now when using LEDs, you need to be aware of their polarity, and there's 3 ways to do this for a standard 5mm LED. The negative terminal has a shorter leg, its side is flat, and the filament is larger. Having confirmed the wiring is correct, it's time to integrate electronics into the design. I'm starting by drilling some holes in the acrylic. A red LED fits perfectly, and it will be well hidden behind the aluminum letters, but as you can see the round head extrudes out too much, therefore I need to sand it down and get it flat. White LEDs will be glued to the sides of the acrylic, so their heads need to be sanded down too. Much better. Having made the corresponding holes in the backboard, and after I put the LEDs in place, I can now proceed to wiring. The red wire goes to the positive terminal and is shared between both the white and the red LEDs. The return path is different though. This is because I want to adjust the brightness of 2 colors separately. For the backboard, I chose single core wires, because once bent they stay in that shape. This is the reason why it's easier to work with them. On the other hand, stranded core wires can be bent repeatedly without the risk of snapping, so I chose those when wiring the electronics within the box, as you will see just in a few moments. To join the wires, I heat the contact area with a soldering iron and then touch it with some solder. I use the same method for the brightness control circuit board. Snapping off unnecessary wire ends helps to keep things tidy. So now to join the acrylic to the backboard, I'm using 2-part epoxy glue, and since this is some strong stuff, I'm using rubber gloves to protect myself. I need to mix equal parts of resin and hardener, and since at least this type of epoxy has a strong odor, this is best done in a well-ventilated area. Mixing well is a key to ensure a strong bond. I need to confess, I'm really worried about this step. Even though the glue is advertised to set clear, once I put the coat on and bring the acrylic back, unless I can provide a uniform pressure, once the glue is set, I would see patches. So I'm not even gonna risk it. Instead, I'm gonna turn this to my advantage. I'm putting most of the glue on each end close to the white LEDs, and some top and bottom around the letters. This should achieve a quite cool effect. Once lit, the light should be diffused in the glue patches. I'm applying pressure to all of the corners, giving the glue time to set. I accidentally made a few scratches while filing, so I need to get rid of them. I'm trying to accomplish this by using some car polish. Once done, I can now glue the letters to the acrylic. I'm trying not to put too much glue to prevent it from being pushed out around the letters. I'm careful to put the word right inside the frame I engraved earlier. Peeling the protective film gives so much pleasure, and it's revealing what seems to be quite a fantastic look. I really like it. And when you think about it, I cut the letters with a jigsaw. I'm adding pieces of aluminium I cut out earlier on each side to cover the LEDs. Finally, the LEDs themselves can be glued in place. Earlier, I cut out and bent an aluminium piece, which will be used to hold the display panel on top of the base. Having drilled a hole, I can now route the wires through it. Same goes for the base. With the wires now available on the other side, I'm soldering a red wire to the positive battery terminal. I'm also adding 2 wires for the switch. But before I can solder the other ends, I need to slot the switch in place. Now one goes to the negative terminal of the battery, while the other goes to the brightness control board. Having all the wires soldered, I can now hide the electronics away in the box. I made a couple of holes for screws to hold the lid in place, but I ended up not needing them. And all what's left is just to screw the aluminium neck to the back of the display panel and to the base. And here it is. To be honest, I couldn't expect it to look any better than this. I love how the shine from the aluminium interacts with a more matte wood. And here's how it looks at nighttime. The LED is dimmed. And the LED is tuned to my liking. Oh, this piece is gonna sit on my desk for a long time. I had so much pleasure making this a reality, and I'm so glad that you were part of it. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button to let me know. And if you feel that my efforts deserved it, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for sticking around, that means a lot to me. which is why I hope to see you next time. Until then,